Hey, if you're enjoying Paradigm Playbook podcast, please share and tag us on social media. Your support is greatly appreciated. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Paradigm Playbooks podcast. I'm your host, Dave Kozak, alongside my co-host, Mr. Steve Cook.
Morning, David.
Hello, sir. And as always, we got our producer, Niall, on the line.
Great to be here as always. Great to be here as always.
All right. Somebody's excited this morning. So we've got a concept today that I think is one that we could probably spend 10 podcasts on. But we'll cover kind of the 20,000 foot view today of kind of theory and practice behind time management.
Yeah, I think we can start with a little bit of history. And I've already got two spin-off podcasts in mind thinking about delegation and then atomic habits, which kind of, it all ties together. So if we get off track, we can kind of transfer some to the next podcast. But if you go back in the history, I think when people first start talking about time management, probably in the 50s or 60s with the Industrial Revolution, and everything was done around efficiency. And it's when production lines came into vogue and specialization of skills. And the more efficient you could be, the more you could get done. And it was thought that that was the best way to manage time.
Well, and if you let's go back even further. Let's talk like 1901 I
wasn't there then.
I know,
okay.
But in thinking about it, right, it was low wage and a lot of work, and there was no protections. And so as you get into the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and employer protections or employee protections started to come out, unions started to flex themselves more. What you had to get the same amount of work done. And you had less time to do it. So efficiency became the key, right? And so I think ultimately it's a matter of efficiency. And, war production had a lot to do with trying to drive efficiencies and, the idea of the assembly lines and all that stuff that was pioneered by Henry Ford. That's all kind of the origin of it, right?
Yeah, I think we probably don't give enough credence to the fact that demand creates efficiency.
100%.
And that's the whole war effort is it had to be done by a certain date.
Yeah.
So by nature, we got more efficient.
And I think it also forces innovation, right? So there's so many linked subjects to time management because if you're doing something a certain way, and we've talked about this in podcasts before, where this is how we've always done it, right? Those are the toxic words of a business. So your necessity to get something done by a deadline and at scale requires efficiency. It requires innovation so that you can be more efficient. And in that, time management is a major concept that has to be evaluated because that's really the judgment of efficiency, right? How much time does it take to produce the quality product that you want or quality service?
I think time management flipped in probably, I'm guessing it was the late 80s with Dr. Stephen Covey was the first real innovator in time management that took it from this efficiency model to an importance model. And as I remember it, Dr. Covey was the first to create the matrix. And on one axis, you had urgency, and on one axis, you had importance. So you could quadrantize every task that you had to do, and it fit in there. So now we were choosing based on importance. But I think what that was doing, it was rearranging our task list. It wasn't creating more time. It was just saying, okay, we're going to spend all our time. If there was a fault to the system, we never got around to those things that were maybe not as important or not as urgent. We got everything that was important and urgent in that quadrant done. Important but not urgent was probably second. And then we never got to the rest of the things. So I don't know that was truly time management.
Well, I think time management is the concept that you have to think about it, right? That's part of it. Is planning has a lot to do with time management, the importance of the job, the amount of time you should allocate to that job. And then I think that the other thing that ties right into this is the ability to say no or put it on the shelf or pin it, right? Because what will happen for all entrepreneurs at one time or another, and I've faced this over the last 2 years, is everything comes at once. You got to handle everything. There's fires to put out. There's new business missions to address. There's new products. There's new innovations that have to be implemented. And all of a sudden, it's like this snowball effect of you couldn't be busier, right? And I think some of time management is knowing, hey, I don't have the bandwidth right now. I gotta shelf that.
Yes, and I think a lot of the greats in business talk about not only their to-do list, but their do not do list.
Yeah.
And that's the, Warren Buffett, Elon Musk, all these people, I turn down more opportunities. I turn down, and I feel like I don't do a great job with that. You have this pleasing mentality that, when you're in a customer driven industry, you think, okay, I've got to please everybody. But if you're not turning down something or part of something, I try to tell my salespeople all the time, it's okay that you talk to everybody that, contacts you. It's how much time you invest in talking to each person. And that's got to go on a importance and urgency quadrant.
100%. And I just gave a presentation to our sales team yesterday about we go through wins and losses every week. So we talk about a win, we talk about a loss. And the loss is something that you didn't do well, that you could have done better, that was a reflection on your previous weeks. And I had spent an incredible amount of time with a client, and ultimately they wanted to go in a different direction. And I saw it coming from the very get-go. There was a lack of understanding, there was a lack of clarity, and I should have known, hey, don't waste your time with that. One of the things that salespeople in particular latch on to opportunity, because opportunity is growth, sales, money. And so you latch on to opportunity and you don't know when to let it go, right? You don't know when to say, hey, this deal's not going anywhere. You don't, and you're unwilling to accept that it may not go somewhere, so I can't invest the time, because you're going to try and push. I got to get this one closed. This is the one that's going to make my month. Oh man, if I nail this elephant, it's going to make my year,
It takes everything back to saying that most decisions are emotional.
Yep.
and not necessarily logical. We like to think we're logical people, but time management, like everything else, is an emotion thing. It's getting to work on time is the most important thing in your day.
Yeah.
Until your 5-year-old's tugging at your leg.
Yeah.
And then importance shifts. So that's an emotional. I'm not saying it's a wrong decision, but we have to acknowledge that the decisions become emotional. And if you spend more time with one employee than another, in all likelihood, it's not based on need or outcome. It's based on emotion. It's this one. It's more fun talking with this person. This customer's easier to deal with.
And Steve, I love when we first met, you told me a philosophy you had, and I think, and it has resonated with me for a long time, and I've only put it into action in the last 3 years, but it was, you would get to work at 5:30 in the morning, meaning you had to get up well before that to get yourself ready and to go. And your philosophy was that gave you at least an hour and a half head start on the earliest starters of the day. And since you felt you needed the head start, you would get you ahead, and you were able to get more accomplished in that period of time. And I think that philosophy is true across the board, right? You can't make more business hours. It just doesn't happen. The clock doesn't change, right? You got 24 hours to do it. And I think there's something that a lot of people sacrifice, and you shouldn't, which is sleep, to try and get time, because it makes you ineffective and unproductive.
And I'm going to dig into a look at that in a minute. But so the number 1440, which is the minutes in the day, before you switched me over to this remarkable, the 1440 was written in bold on the front of meaning that we all have the same 1440. So it's more about how we manage ourselves, because we're not going to get any more of those minutes. So I want to go into what I consider and has been called the third level, the third stage of time management. And if the first stage was efficiency, and that's about how much you can get done. The second is importance, how important is what you get done. The third level is significance, and that's how long will you benefit from what you get done. So I think, Rory Vaden is the one I heard first do this, and he talked about the what they call it, Niles, the focus funnel. I think it was the focus funnel is what he called it. Anyway,
yeah, Rory Vaden's focus funnel.
Is that up there?
Yep.
Yeah, that one right there. That's it. Okay, so I like this. So everything comes in this funnel. This is all your tasks are coming into this. At the very top, the first question you ask, can I eliminate this? Does it even need to be done? And I think most of our mistakes are made right there.
And this is reflecting back
yes.
to what we were talking about, I think last week or the week before when you said procrastinate on purpose.
Yeah,
right. So
that's where this is going to end. It's the same guy, Rory Vaden.
Got it.
So eliminate. The next step is automate. And I think I told this story before. It's like, I don't have 2 hours to set up online bill paying, but if I did, it would save me 30 minutes a week. And at the end of 4 months, I'm working to the positive.
Yeah.
So that is really time management. That's time creation. So automation. It's amazing that we haven't benefited from this because we're all walking around with a computer in our pocket. And I don't think we take advantage of that fully.
No, too many distractions on that little computer in the pocket, Steve.
Yeah.
Well, for us
so
young folks.
by putting that in there, we're allowing more to come in the top of that funnel.
Yeah.
And so every task, that's returning every text and email you get. So by having that in your pocket, you're getting, 100% more. So that's not good. After automate, you get down to delegate. And this is where you have to find another way or another person. And we're going to dig into that. So I'm not going to go
Yeah, we'll talk
deep
about that in the next podcast because delegation is a huge subject matter. But I love the way this thing lays out for sure.
Okay, so once you come out, it's made it through all those things. Now you've determined, okay, I have to do this.
Yep.
And what Rory says is the decision is simple. It's now or later.
Yep.
If it's now, then it's concentrate. So eliminate, automate, delegate, concentrate. So put your time into it. Focus. There's a whole nother podcast we can do on focus, but focus is put your mind down, head down, all other distractions turned off and focus on it. If it's not now, it's later. And that's where he brings in procrastinate on purpose. The difference between procrastinate and procrastinate on purpose is that procrastinate is not doing something that we know we should be doing and we just don't feel like it. Procrastinate on purpose is saying we need to do something with it. We're deciding when to do it. Yeah. So it's a conscious decision.
Yeah. And I think when you go to the time management concepts, whether you're using a notepad, a good old fashioned flip page organizer, or, your Google Outlook calendar, your Google calendar, your Outlook calendar, whatever it is, I think the idea of later now goes to time management. Well, how much later? When later? Is there a deadline? Okay. And you're looking at the calendar and you're going, okay, I know this thing has to be done. I'm choosing not to do it now because it's of less importance than something else that is trumping it. And then I'm going to push this off to, okay, my calendar says Friday, I've got some free time. I'm going to start this project, or I'm going to start this thought conditioner, or whatever it needs to happen. I'm going to do that Friday 9 to 10. And then if Friday at 9 to 10, for the last 15 minutes, I'm going to figure out exactly how big this project is, what I've got going on, and how many days or hour blocks or hour and a half blocks or meetings I need to have. And I'm going to try and schedule that stuff out Friday when I have focused concentration time. Right.
Yeah. And it all feeds back into this focus funnel. I remember Zig Ziglar, who's my all-time favorite writer, just because of he's the only one who writes with a Southern accent. And you hear it that way. But he used to always talk about everything that comes to him goes in the right-hand top desk drawer, and he called it the fruit bin. And everything goes in the fruit bin because there's only two things that can happen. Either it gets ripe and you eat it, or it goes rotten and you throw it away. And it's the same kind of idea, but he said that probably 50 years ago.
Know someone who could benefit from our business expertise? Send them our way. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a great way to look at things. And I think, there's this issue with organization that comes into time management, which again, another conversation we can have. But how do you sort through your fruit that's ripe and your fruit that's rotten? What is your method to sorting it, right? And in this focus funnel, task comes in, you either eliminate it. Now I'm not doing that. It doesn't need to be done. Forget about it. You automate. Okay, this goes right into this, and it's a done deal. Delegate, where you take it on yourself, right? That's a way to sort those things, but you have to have that secondary process which is if you are going to procrastinate, how are you going to procrastinate, right? You can't procrastinate on purpose unless you have a way to do that.
Yeah, well, that's what he's saying. You're making the decision of when it's going to be attacked.
But I think it's that whole process after that that's important as well.
I've just recently switched to trying to manage my entire day and task list on a calendar. So I've gotten away from a task list. So if it's important enough, it's going to go on my calendar.
Yep.
Everything goes. This is a whole nother topic we could get in. I keep an annual calendar that is by month and day. So that it's the key takeaways. So I know all my travel, all my speaking engagements, podcast is in there every week. So all that's in there. And then it goes to I use Outlook, but a Google Calendar, any of them work where you can pull it out by day, week, month, or whatever. But if it's good enough to be a task, it's good enough to fit in that calendar. And I'd rather see an overstuffed calendar than an empty calendar and a 20 task list.
Yeah, agreed. Go ahead, Niall. I see you chomping at the bit back there.
All right. So something that I kind of just want to jump back into is, the Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. On habit number 3, putting first things first, he kind of talks about management, how it follows leadership, and kind of just prioritizing like what you want to do in your life. He says, the way you spend your time is a result of the way you see your time and the way you really see your priorities. If your priorities grow out of a principle-centered and a personal mission, if they are deeply planted in your heart and your mind, you will see Quadrant 2 as natural, exciting place to invest your time. It's almost impossible to say no to the popularity of Quadrant 3 or to the burning escape to Quadrant 4. If you don't have a bigger yes burning inside, only when you have the self-awareness to examine your program and the imagination and conscious to create a new, unique, principle-centered program to which you can say yes to the only sufficient independent willpower to say no with a genuine smile. Basically, he's saying you got to prioritize your life, and decide whether or not you can say yes or no.
Yeah, and there's another book called Essentialism that kind of speaks to that in more simple terms, which is if it's important, and Steve, it goes right back to the 3 concepts, right? Is it important? Is it urgent? And I love the third tier, which is for how long will it,
right?
Is it create that satisfaction and significance. So I think all of that is to say you have to have some filter of whether it's projects, tasks, whatever. It's about the filter that helps the time management, because one of the hardest things to deal with is when you really want to do this thing. I really want to do this. Oh, I think it'd be so cool to do that, but it's not going to do anything for you. But I just want to do it. And so there's also the concept of utility or satisfaction, economic satisfaction that you have to bring into it too. Because, for me right now, making my physique where I want it, it's an important thing, but it's not really doing anything for it's doing something for my health and longevity without question. But is it doing anything for business? No, but it's a different satisfaction, a different level that I'm focused on, right?
Well, I believe it is doing something for your business. You may not realize it, but a sound body is a smarter mind. I believe that. So I just
keep working out and I'm going to get smarter.
Not Nile level, but you'll get smarter.
Not Nile level. All right, got it.
I believe that. But I also believe that keeping one calendar for your life makes sense. I think we talked about this once before, where it's intertwined in there in my business calendar. So I know when I'm going on vacation, what time I'm going to be home for dinner each day, when I'm date night with my wife or whatever. All those things go into the same calendar. It's all my life. So, if people don't like it, it's not about what they should do. It's about what I should do. And what Niall was, I think, kind of hinting at through the Stephen Covey quote is that time management, like every other part of leadership, comes from the top. If you're not managing your time properly and you go into the office and see 3 sales guys sitting around shooting the shit over a cup of coffee, then that comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
So it all ties to leadership. I don't know if that's what you're getting at, Niall, but that's what I took out of that.
Well, I think it's what you allow is what will continue. And if you allow yourself to procrastinate not on purpose, just to procrastinate. Like that's what you're going to surround yourself with. Another huge part of time management as an entrepreneur that you have to focus on is not just your own personal time management, but the time management of giving yourself to others, right? You're leading a team of people, whether it's one person or 50 people, doesn't matter. You have to make time for those individuals. And so again, Steve, I love the concept. If it's important enough as a task, then it's certainly important enough to be on the calendar, right? And so I tell my wife all the time, and she knows it because she's partially in charge of my calendar, right? I'm a slave to the calendar. If it's on the calendar, that's what I follow. Because I don't have the intelligence enough to manage tasks and calendars and all that. Like it's got to be on the calendar. If it's scheduled out, I'm going to get it done and I'm going to do it. I'm going to be there.
I agree that you need to set your priorities going into the calendar, not just coming out. Once it's in the calendar, we're assuming that the thought process is already going through that.
Yeah,
it needs to be in there. But I think, and we'll get into it in the next podcast. Are we doing delegation next?
Yeah, I think we have to do delegation.
So we won't dig into that now, but anything that gets procrastinated on purpose goes back in this, and you're going through that process again. Okay, now can we eliminate? And maybe after a week, it can be eliminated, or you found a way to automate it, or somebody has stepped up and Niles steps up and says, I can do that. And it's delegated and Niles takes it over. He may take my seat here. I don't know. But anyway, I think everything, it cycles through this focus funnel all the time and it weeds things out as you go. And that way you're only the things that make it to concentrate are what you're doing.
Yeah.
But then it's a matter of head down, nose down, focus.
Well, and there's another concept that I've used throughout my career, and I don't know where it came from. I don't know how I'm assuming my dad probably told me about it because he was always whispering business knowledge in my ears as I was growing up. And he used to say, there's A-level work, there's B-level work, and there's C-level work. And then he would say there's A-level jobs, B-level jobs, and C-level jobs. And sometimes, you just have to read something, let's say. You just got to be kind of briefed on it, if you will. Well, that's not an A-level job. That's a C-level job, right? That's a job I can do while I'm, sitting in front of the TV at night. I can read something just so I'm familiar with the subject matter, right? I don't need a time to do that. So an A job requires a time. And I think there's something to time management of knowing strengths and weaknesses of the individual. I, for my entire life, was an athlete that worked out after school. Right. So I played baseball in college. All of our workouts were after school. And so I was really alive from the hours of 3 to, 10 p.m. when I was working out and doing those activities. Well, my adult life, I'm a slave to, Little League and everything else that goes on after school. So I had to kind of shift my A time to the morning for my own personal workouts so that I could focus on it. So I think between A jobs, B jobs, and C jobs, A-level work, B-level work, and C-level work, you have to be strategic in that because sometimes there are things that you cannot delegate that need to be done on a deadline, but you don't have to be the master. I'm not the one presenting. I'm just the one facilitating or something like that. And I don't have to know every word that I'm going to say, but I have to have an idea of the pace and flow of what's going on, right?
I find preparation is often one of the things that's left off the calendar.
Yep.
So in the last 3 weeks, I gave 6 different talks. So I was all out going at this. My hardest thing was scheduling in the prep time and the practice time. So you can't just do it. But I think you need to, 1, put that in your calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2, Zig used to call it, I go back to Zig a lot, but Zig used to call it, what are you carrying that is your flat tire time? If you get stuck on the side of the road, is there a way that you can maximize an hour waiting for a tow truck or whatever it is?
Yeah.
But that's the book you read. It's Warren Buffett always says that he does not travel without 2 books, just in case he finishes one.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, but they're all pieces of time management.
You're going to love this, Steve. My oldest is now 11. And when she went to kindergarten, they had this thing called a RED file, RED. And RED stood for read every day. And every day that file got a book and it was sent home. And that happened from kindergarten, first grade, and second grade. They had the RED file, right? And they would all bring, now my youngest is heading into kindergarten. I have 4. They've all been through the RED thing. And the day I learned that, I went down to my desk and I pulled out an old file and I wrote RED on the front of it. And I carry with me like articles that are not things for me right now that I need to spend time on, but things that I want to read. And so when I have that 15 minutes or when I have that half hour, I've always got something to read. There's copies of Trust and Estates magazine in there. There's insurance journals in there. There's just articles that were sent to me by someone that hey, the title was catchy enough. I want to make sure I get time to do this. And so I use a RED file, read every day.
And there's so many easy ways to do that. I'm now writing, short articles on Substack, and Substack is great because you can subscribe and you constantly, and it comes to me on my phone. So I constantly have articles that are on my topical or the authors I like that are constant with me. So anytime that you're stuck, you're waiting in line, you're bored, you're sitting in front of a TV for which you didn't select the show, which happens for me a lot. I have something else in front of me that I can be reading, but I think it's always maximizing your time. And I guess in closing, what I would say is it's not as much about time management as self-management.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it gets down to.
Well, and I'll end it a little differently from another quote that I heard that, motivation comes and goes, but discipline is what makes you successful. And it's doing the things you need to do, regardless of whether you're motivated to do them. And I think talking about self-management, it's being disciplined, right? Disciplined to know, hey, this has to get done now. I don't have an option. Put your head down, get it done. Defer the task that doesn't need done today, and being disciplined to stay in that, and be a little rigid about that stuff. I think that makes a difference in time management. So again, I'd agree with you.
Yeah. So thanks for pulling up the focus funnel, Niall. I think it added to the conversation. So
yep. All right, everybody. That's Paradigm Playbooks podcast for today on time management. Talk to you next week.
Make it a productive week.
Did we help you learn, grow, and improve? Leave us a review to let us know how we're doing. Thank you.